Oh, okay, good.
Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order meeting of the Healdsburg City Council for February 17, 2026. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Higley.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Here.
Vice Mayor Edwards.
Here.
Mayor Herod.
Here. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic, stand one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Higley.
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards.
Yes.
Mayor Herod.
Yes. There was no closed session to report on, and we would like to begin with a proclamation declaring February 2026 as Black History Month in the city of Healdsburg with Vice Mayor Ron Edwards.
A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Healdsburg declaring February 2026 as Black History Month in the City of Healdsburg. Whereas the month of February is officially celebrated as a national event honoring Black history and recognizing the heritage and achievement of African Americans. And African Americans have played a central role in our nation's history, and the contributions African Americans have made and continue to make are an integral part of our society. And the migration of African Americans to all parts of the United States and throughout the world have led to countless ineligible contributions in the fields of science, medicine, law, social justice, athletics, the arts, government, and more. And whereas the City of Healdsburg recognizes and values diversity, equity, and inclusion within our community, and the presence of African Americans in our community continues to enhance the quality of life in the City of Healdsburg. And whereas the City of Healdsburg understands that African Americans had endured egregious discrimination and bigotry throughout the course of our nation's history, conflicting with the core values of the City of Healdsburg. And whereas Black History Month calls on all collective needs to recognize and combat racism and continue to build a community that embraces all ages, races, religion, and genders. And whereas Black history is American history, and Black History Month is a time where all citizens are encouraged to reflect on past successes and challenges of Black communities, and to look to the future to ensure wisdom, freedom, equity, and inclusiveness. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Healdsburg declares February 2026 as Black History Month in the City of Healdsburg. And if I could, Mayor, I'd just like to make a little statement on the passing of Jesse Jackson today. Jesse Jackson was a bridge between the era of Jim Crow and the modern fight for equity. He was towering inspiration American, a fighter for civil and human rights, a man whose career has been defined by the tireless pursuit of the least of these. From the front lines of the 1960s movement to the halls of international diplomacy, his impact on America was profound. One of Jesse Jackson's most enduring political legacies is the Rainbow Coalition, founded during his 1984 and 1988 presidential campaigns. The coalition was a groundbreaking effort to unite disparate groups, disadvantaged minorities, the working poor, farmers, and the LGBTQ+ community under a single banner of social and economic justice. Jesse Jackson didn't just run for office, he ran to expand the possibilities of what democracy looks like. It's impossible not to think of his impact when you hear these phrases. Keep hope alive. I am somebody. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you had the opportunity to share those words and honor Reverend Jackson. Here tonight with us are Kimberly Donovan and Malia Anderson from the NAACP to receive the proclamation. Welcome. You can use the podium here.
If you want to say something at the podium.
Hello, I'm Malia Anderson with the NAACP, and we'd like to thank you and thank the City of Healdsburg for recognizing the work that the NAACP does within the community and the partnerships that we've had with the City of Healdsburg on several projects. It's our honor to continue the work, especially on a day like today with the passing of Jesse Jackson. We look to build community here in Sonoma County and to really make sure that we push for equality and continue to push for equality in our community as well as in the city of Healdsburg. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're going to do photos in just a moment, but if you want to take a seat, I'm going to open up for public comment at this time. If you'd like to come forward.
Thank you, Mayor. Peter Alexander. Regarding this topic, well, you started off with the Rainbow Coalition. I'll let everybody know that the Hopi prophecy of purification refers to today's youth as the most powerful youth the world has ever seen. And they're referred to as warriors of the rainbow spirit. They're here to bring all the youth together out of the churches and out of the schools to do wonderful, powerful things like massive garden programs and more. Now, regarding Black History Month, I mean, I'll start off by saying I believe it's entirely more than possible that God is a Black woman. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. Now, on the other hand, I want to be known that the three most powerful people I've met in that realm are Malcolm Shabazz, the grandson of Malcolm X, that is never mentioned in any events. Not in Black History Month, not in Black Lives Matter, and I don't understand why. He's a grandson of Malcolm X, and I knew him. And I also knew Cynthia McKinney, who is probably the most powerful woman ever in D.C. from my perspective. And I've had the pleasure of meeting Angela Davis, who I highly regard. Now, the point I wish to make right now is that there is no statute of limitations for murder. And I witnessed the murder of an officer in Philadelphia in 1981. And it was blamed on Mumia Abu-Jamal, who's still in prison to this day. I put forth affidavits, which I have a copy right here. I put forth a testimony in court in 2017. I am the second witness that came forward. And my affidavit did get him off of death row, but he's still in prison. And he has a connection to the incarceration of a Green Beret surgeon, Dr. Jeffrey McDonald. It's the same cartel that put them both in prison, and they're still there, 48 years and 54 years later. And this is wrong. So let's see. I'm willing to give this information to the NAACP, to law enforcement. I support honest law enforcement, and the CSPOA, the Constitutional Sheriff's Peace Officers Association. I have with me court documents, judge documents when I was arrested by Ed Rendell, the governor of Pennsylvania, who was one of the 4 people that arranged the murder of Officer Faulkner and the setup of Mumia Abu-Jamal. And that's a fact. And I'd like to know who's prepared to do what with this information. And so I'm going to just read to you what I sent to the judge who fined me for interrupting this event. Of course, I'm running out of time, so I won't be able to do that. But my wish is that law enforcement and the NAACP take a picture of my documents. This man is still in prison. I am the second witness, and I'm the one who witnessed the people that arranged the murder of the officer for being an honest white cop in Philadelphia at that time, interfering with their prostitution and drugs. And they set it up on Mumia Abu-Jamal, who was a Black Panther who was very, very good on the radio and very good with words, which is why they took him out. So thank you for blessing me with your time.
Thank you. If you have materials you want to share with the council, you can leave those with the city clerk. And
I would need to have copies made or pictures taken. I only have one set.
and you could forward those to her at a later time, and she would forward those to the council if you wish.
I would ask that someone be provided me the opportunity just to take pictures or copies since I'm here. It's very difficult for me to do that otherwise. But I'll be here for public comment in a few minutes afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, keep if you want to leave your contact information, I'll reach out to you.
Very good.
Does anybody else want to speak for public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to welcome back our recipients, Aaliyah, for a photograph. If you would like to come forward, please. Thank you.
Come on in.
Oh, yeah, we should. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on now to city manager reports.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple of quick updates for you all this evening. First off, wanted to share, as we've put out on social media, that we'll have some closures within areas of the plaza over the next couple of days, Wednesday and Thursday this week. We're doing pruning of the palm trees in the plaza, which is done every few years to keep them healthy, to keep branches from dropping, and it also prevents rodents nesting in the trees. So we'll have sections of the plaza closed during the next couple of days and wanted to let people know. Also, just a little fun trivia on those palm trees. I'm told that they are Canary Island date palms, and they were planted in 1897 in the plaza as part of a campaign to promote Healdsburg as a tropical island. Trivia compliments of our community services department. I don't know entirely what that campaign consisted of, but I do intend to find out. But those are very old palm trees, so we're doing our best to take good care of them. A couple of, looking toward next month, a couple of calendar updates. First off is the activation of the Foley Family Community Pavilion will start in late March, the weekend of the 21st and 22nd. We will be hosting a special pop-up of the farmers market to celebrate the spring and begin using and testing out that facility before the official start of the market in April. So that's Saturday, March 21st. And then the following day, that afternoon, also the 21st, after the farmers market, Vamos al Tianguis will return for their markets, which have previously been in the parking lot here at City Hall and will be moving to the pavilion. So we'll have two events, the farmers market and the Vamos market on Saturday, the 21st. And then that Sunday, we'll have the second iteration of the Healdsburg Community Housing and Resource Fair. You might recall that this was an event put on by the city in partnership with many, many nonprofits at the community center last year, an opportunity to bring together a lot of the service providers who serve the community here in town into one place where people can meet them, get connected, and access resources. So that will be coming back and will be hosted at the pavilion on Sunday, March 22nd. And then lastly, I mentioned this during my update at the last meeting, but we didn't have a confirmed date. We do now, the following day after that weekend, Monday, March 23rd at 5:30 will be an open house hosted at the community center here with SMART. This will really be an open house and a community opportunity to get information and ask questions about the upcoming construction process for SMART's extension to Healdsburg. So we've talked about that a lot, and we know lots of people have questions about what that will look like. I don't know that they have every answer about every aspect of the construction right now, but they are getting a lot closer. and have done a really nice job committing to making themselves available for the community. So that won't be the only opportunity, but that will be a first opportunity for people to come and ask questions about that. Again, that's the Smart Open House on March 23rd at the Community Center, 5:30 to 7:30 that evening. Mayor, that's all I've got. I'm happy to take any questions.
Do you have any questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to public comment now. This time is set aside to receive comments from the public regarding matters of general interest, not on the agenda, but related to City Council business. Pursuant to the Brown Act, however, the City Council cannot consider any issues or take action on any requests during this comment period. If anybody would like to speak come forward. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Peter Alexander. American Spirit History Month acknowledgement. The Black Panthers and American Indian movement were both started by American vets. Previously sent to war on behalf of the corporate store here on this earthly ball of confusion buried in its illusion. Similarly, the Brown Beret with Vietnam vets, both special forces and those who flew jets. While Code Pink started by anti-war women warriors, also supported by vets like Colonel Ann Wright. I am Peter, I'm commanding all spirit warriors, unite, now finishing the fight. This being the year of the fire horse, all united, one with the force, special forces upon Black Elk's horses. I am commanding as commanded till every knee to earth remanded, all my dog soldiers, all true warriors of Christ, the cost already so highly priced. All time is now, and now is the time. The iron rod of God, like Thor's hammer, comes now down to splinter the slammer. The eclipse generates the full blood moon, this so commanded as American warriors' high noon. Truly, truly a most powerfully beautiful full tune moon. More than considered to review all YouTubes of Julia Butterfly Hill, a woman warrior with serious military skill. So too Zoe Rosenberg with tenacity, patience, and love, supported from beyond and above. All warriors of true American spirit unity be calling, for truly I tell you, Almighty is calling for corruption's falling. Already arisen, having heard the lightning and thunder from beyond and down under, the Kilauea volcano eruption has spurred the spirit to burn all corruption. As I have commanded forth, comes now from the east, west, south, and north, with an unbeatable velocity and ferocity, my soldiers, both seen and unseen, all lean, mean, green, and serene, old timers and warrior rhymers, weary of the cursed, arise with the spirit warriorship of earth first. For freedom you thirst, free the animals and her earth first. All aboard with the living Lord, the 40-day freedom strike lays down the sword. Of import, I further share the connection between Black Panther and Green Beret, Mumia Abu-Jamal and Dr. Jeffrey McDonald, buried in the prison by the same cartel. I've made arrangements for their spiral into hell, for there is nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. I am Peter, I am your guide. From the depths of the dark, I've set fire by spark to the emerald fire that burns brightly with the light of freedom and liberty. For the chains that once held Rico, the baddest dog on the reservation, who now shines with fierce sensation, these chains now upon the father of all lies and alibis. I am Peter, I am servant. It is so, it is done. Aho. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment tonight? Welcome.
Dan Pizza, Kennedy Lane. Tough act to follow. 2 years ago, we were told you needed to raise our water rates by 54% to pay for infrastructure upgrades, which the city had ignored for several years. Every resident and business owner who spoke at this podium said the increase was too much. After we expressed our opposition, every one of you went ahead and voted in favor of the increase. Our rates went up 21% in 2024. Last year, another 20%, and now another 13% increase is coming in July. Last council meeting, the budget presenter told us that they had miscalculated the rate increase and that the city was ahead of pace
to pay for the upgrades. Shockingly, none of you followed up on this information. Affordability is the #1 concern in this country. Every Democrat has been complaining about affordability, yet when you had a chance to actually have an effect, you did nothing. Why wasn't the presenter asked about lowering rates or at least putting off the July increase? At this point, the very least you can do is request of the staff to perform a study as to whether an adjustment to our water rates is warranted. I find it odd that the mayor can push through a study on a micro transport project that nobody wants, including the majority of the council. But when it comes to something as simple as to make our life more affordable, I have to come to this meeting to make a formal request. I realize that you're never going to go back to remote comments at meetings or require the mayor to allow comments on his social media. But if you're going to tell people to just email the council, I believe that any emails the council receives pertaining to an upcoming meeting should be read aloud at the meeting. You cannot expect residents to attend meetings in person that go on for 3.5 hours. And with that thought, perhaps you might also want to consider putting a clock on comments from council members, some of which seem to drag on endlessly. Thank you for your time. I have plenty of time left. Talking points. Learn it, love it, live it. Thank you.
Does anyone else like to speak for public comment tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, and I'll take a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Higley,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards.
Yes.
Mayor Harrod.
Yes. All right, thank you. And moving on to public hearings now, we have a public hearing on land use code amendments to address recent state laws related to SB 9, SB 684, and 1123. Welcome, Senior Planner Ellen McDowell.
Good evening, Mayor Harrod and Vice Mayor Edwards and council members. I'm Ellen McDowell with the Planning Division. Tonight we'll be discussing some state housing legislation land use code updates related to SB 9, SB 684, and SB 1123. Next slide, thank you. Tonight, it's recommended that the council adopt an ordinance amending Healdsburg Municipal Code Title 20, Section 20.2125, SB 9 Housing Development. And the second action would be to adopt an ordinance amending Healdsburg Municipal Code Section 20.20040 in its entirety, small lot subdivisions to implement Senate Bill 684 and Senate Bill 1123 and making other conforming changes. Next slide, please. On May 1st, 2023, the City Council adopted the city's housing element and was certified by the state on June 29th, 2023. As part of that housing element, the city committed to a series of implementation programs, including amendments to the city's land use code intended to expand housing development and capacity and to reduce regulatory constraints, particularly through increased allowable densities. The Planning Commission held a workshop on September 3rd, 2025, to review and provide feedback on draft ordinances addressing accessory dwelling units, state density bonus law, Senate Bill 9, Senate Bill 684, and Senate Bill 1123. During that workshop, the Planning Commission offered input on a range of policy and development standards. This included feedback on setbacks, parking requirements, objective design standards, unit sizes, privacy considerations related to SB 9, and discussion of ADU and JADU prohibitions, parking standards, and objective design requirements associated with SB 684 and SB 1123. Following that workshop on October 28th, 2025, the Planning Commission formally reviewed and considered the land use code amendments related to accessory dwellings and state density bonus law. At that meeting, the commission recommended that the city council adopt those ordinances, and city council did adopt both on November 11th, 2025. On January 27th, staff returned to the Planning Commission with ordinances that addressed SB 9, SB 684, and 1123. And at that Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission recommended that the City Council adopt both of those ordinances as well. And now we're here tonight. Next slide, please. Okay, Senate Bill 9 is also known as the Housing Opportunity and More Efficiency Act, or the HOME Act, and it took effect on January 1st, 2022. SB 9 represents a significant shift in the state's approach to residential zoning by allowing up to 4 homes on a single-family residential parcel. The law effectively eliminates single-family zoning statewide and encourages incremental infill development that can increase housing opportunities while maintaining the neighborhood scale. To implement SB 9 locally, the city has prepared an ordinance that will be incorporated into Title 20 of the Healdsburg Municipal Code. The ordinance establishes clear standards and procedures for SB 9 two-unit developments and urban lot splits that are both consistent with state law. Some key provisions that were incorporated into the ordinance include that SB 9 projects are to be processed ministerially. This means that qualifying applications are approved without discretionary review or any public hearings. Once a complete application is submitted, the city would be required to approve or deny the project within 60 days. Next, the ordinance allows two-unit developments on lots that are currently zoned for single-family residential use. In addition, the ordinance allows for urban lot splits, which permit an existing single-family lot to be subdivided into 2 parcels. And each resulting parcel may contain up to 2 units, which would allow for a maximum of 4 units on a property that previously would have only accommodated a single-family home. The ordinance establishes objective standards for lot splits, including requirements that the original parcel must be divided roughly in half. The smaller parcel must be at least 40% of the original lot area, and the new parcel must be a minimum of 1,200 square feet in size. Unit size is also regulated and is limited to a maximum of 1,750 square feet per unit. Next slide, please. With respect to setbacks, the ordinance establishes a maximum of 4-foot side and rear yard setbacks consistent with state law. Parking requirements are limited to 1 parking space per unit unless the parcel is located within a half a mile of a major transit stop such as the SMART station, in which case no parking would be required. For urban lot splits, the ordinance also includes an owner occupancy requirement. Applicants must submit and sign an affidavit stating their intent to occupy one of the housing units as their primary residence for a minimum of 3 years. The ordinance also includes exemptions and protections from intended to prevent displacement and address site constraints. Properties with existing tenant protections or environmental limitations, such as flood hazards, hillsides, or very high fire severity zones, are excluded from eligibility. Finally, the ordinance includes objective design and development standards to ensure that SB 9 projects are compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods while maintaining consistency with state law. These standards establish a maximum building height of 35 feet, require an upper story setback from side property lines, require compliance with the city's water efficient landscaping ordinance. As required by SB 9, the planning and building director is authorized to modify or waive these standards when necessary to avoid physically precluding the construction of 2 units per parcel or reducing the unit sizes below 800 square feet. To formalize these requirements, the ordinance adds a new chapter to Title 20, as shown in Attachment 1. This new chapter would codify SB 9 urban lot splits and 2-unit development standards and would provide clarity and predictability for applicants, staff, and decision makers while still ensuring full compliance with state law. Next slide, please. Here we have the policy options that were presented and discussed at the Planning Commission workshop. These included unit size, front setbacks, privacy, parking, and objective design standards. The Planning Commission was supportive of capping the unit sizes at 1,750 square feet, making it consistent with SB 684 and SB 1123, and ensuring the front setback is consistent with the setback for the underlying zoning designation. Staff had originally included a privacy policy option. However, after consulting with our attorney's office, we felt as though it should be struck in accordance with SB 450, which restricts the application of objective zoning standards that don't apply to the underlying zoning districts. The Planning Commission was supportive of requiring 1 parking space per unit for anything outside of that half-mile smart radius. And lastly, the objective design standards originally proposed at the workshop were limited only to standards that apply to residential zoning districts like height, setbacks, and the WELO standards. Next slide, please. California Senate Bill 684 became effective on July 1st, 2024, and is intended to streamline the approval of small-scale residential developments. SB 684 allows for parcels zoned for multifamily residential use and under 5 acres to be developed with up to 10 housing units. This includes the ability to subdivide those parcels into individual lots for single-family units. Because Healdsburg's commercial zoning districts allow for multifamily residential uses, these districts, along with the city's multifamily residential zone, are eligible for development under SB 684. Building on that framework, California Senate Bill 1123 became effective on July 1st, 2025. SB 1123 further expands ministerial housing approvals by extending SB 684 to include vacant lots in single-family residential zones. Under SB 1123, up to 10 residential units may be developed on a vacant lot zoned for single-family residential, subject to the objective standards. To implement both Senate laws locally, the city has prepared a combined SB 684 1123 ordinance that will be incorporated into Title 20 of the Healdsburg Municipal Code. The ordinance will establish clear ministerial approval processes and objective development standards that are consistent with state law. Key provisions of the SB 684 and 1123 ordinance include qualifying projects are to be approved ministerially without discretionary review or public hearings. The city is required to approve or deny a complete application within 60 days. Next, the ordinance defines eligible projects. It applies to developments of 10 or fewer residential units on urban lots up to 5 acres in size and are zoned for multifamily residential. An urban lot is generally that is in town with a higher density and allows for multifamily residential. An eligible project could also be vacant lot zoned for single-family residential up to 1.5 acres in size. To qualify, the project must be completely vacant. Demolition of an existing home would not qualify. Newly created lots must be at least 600 square feet in multifamily zones and at least 1,200 square feet in single-family residential zones. The unit size is limited to a maximum of 1,750 square feet. Setbacks, the required side and rear setbacks from the original lot are limited to 4 feet. And the ordinance includes objective design and development standards to ensure compatibility with surrounding neighborhoods while maintaining consistency with state law. The standards establish a maximum building height of 35 feet, require upper story setbacks from property lines, and require compliance with the city's water efficient landscaping ordinance. Next slide, please. Parking requirements are limited to 1 space per unit, similar to the SB9 ordinance, and no parking is required for projects located within a half mile of a major transit stop like the SMART station. From an environmental review standpoint, qualifying projects are exempt from discretionary review and from CEQA. However, projects are not eligible if the site is located on prime farmland, within wetlands, a high fire hazard severity zone, a special flood area, or a delineated earthquake fault zone. The ordinance also establishes minimum parcel size regulations, no smaller than 600 square feet in multifamily and no smaller than 1,200 square feet for single family. And finally, the ordinance clarifies how accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units are treated. ADUs and JADUs do not count towards the 10-unit maximum when the parcel is greater than 5,000 square feet in size. Overall, the proposed SB 684 and 1123 ordinance provides a clear and predictable framework for small-scale ministerial housing development. It implements recent state legislation and expands opportunities for housing and homeownership, and ensures consistency with the city's land use code while maintaining objective standards for development. The red lines and strikeouts that you see after the SB 684 and 1123 ordinance in the subsequent section are cleanup items related to the removal of the previous small lot subdivision ordinance and the inclusion of the new one. Next slide, please. These are the policy options that were brought forth at the Planning Commission workshop. First off was the prohibition of the JADU and ADUs on lots utilizing SB 684 and 1123. They had a policy option where we could include ADUs and JADUs for all SB 684 and 1123, or we could prohibit them or find somewhere in between. The Planning Commission landed on and gave direction that ADUs and JADUs should not count towards the maximum when the parcel is greater than 5,000 square feet in size. And ADUs and JADUs would be prohibited on lots smaller than 5,000 square feet in size. The Planning Commission determined that one parking space per unit should be required, and similar to SB 9, objective standards would apply, but not be more restrictive than that of the underlying zoning district. Next slide, please. The ordinances both contain exemptions from the city's growth management ordinance. The separate bills prevent the city from being able to enforce local standards, including the GMO cap. For example, if the city had reached the building permit cap within any given cycle, denial of an SB 9, SB 684, or SB 1123 project would likely violate state law. Staff recommended including this exemption and reached out to the California Department of Housing and Community Development. And they provided a letter to us. And in that letter, they support removing barriers and streamlining pathways to housing, but would not provide a definitive answer to us if the GMO explicitly would apply to projects like these or not. In the absence of a formal HCD determination, staff consulted with the city attorney and decided to include the exemption in both ordinances to be in line with state law and limit our exposure to potential challenges. Next slide, please. At the November 11th, 2025 council meeting, council asked about AB 1033 and SB 10. Assembly Bill 1033 authorizes the separate sale of accessory dwelling units independent of the sale of the primary residence. Implementation of AB 1033 would require a complex and resource-intensive process for the property owner, including the preparation of a parcel and condominium map, establishment and recordation of shared access and utility easements, establishment of a separate utility connection and meters for water, gas, electricity, sewer, the formation of a homeowners association, and covenants, conditions, and restrictions to address ongoing maintenance of utilities, landscaping, and common areas, and obtain a lender consent letter if there's an existing mortgage on the property. To date, staff has not received any inquiries or interest regarding the separate sale of ADUs and has not initiated local implementation of AB 1033. Staff can prepare an ordinance allowing for the separate sale of ADUs, but given the complexity and costs outlined above, it's unlikely that many property owners will pursue such projects. While potentially a positive, we don't recommend rearranging our current priorities at this time. Next slide, please. Senate Bill 10 is a voluntary housing law that allows local jurisdictions to adopt an ordinance permitting up to 10 residential units on qualifying parcels within urbanized areas. The intent of SB 10 is to support small-scale missing middle housing near jobs, transit, and services. SB 10 places the responsibility on the city to identify eligible parcels and conduct parcel-level analysis. And initiate rezonings. This would trigger a full legislative process, including public noticing, planning commission workshops, property owner and community outreach, and planning commission and city council hearings to consider and approve any rezoning any parcels. Given the likelihood for polarized public input on rezonings, few jurisdictions statewide have pursued an SB 10 implementation to date. Recently, the city of Grass Valley implemented an ordinance that's similar to SB 10, where they would allow for up to 10 units on eligible mixed-use properties in their downtown core zoning district. The ordinance was adopted in an effort to convert underutilized buildings for residential use in order for the city to meet the housing demands and targets for their RHNA. SB 10 would also require a substantial commitment of staff resources. At the moment, we have multiple major planning initiatives already underway and need to prioritize efforts related to the station area specific plan. Given that SB 9 allows up to 4 units on any single family zoned property and SB 684 and 1123 allow for up to 10 units by right on land zoned for multifamily, up to 5 acres, and land for single family up to 1.5 acres. Staff feels that sufficient tools are currently in place to promote that missing middle income housing here in Healdsburg. Furthermore, the city will begin the preparation of a specific plan within a half mile of the SMART station and the entry to the South Entry area plan this spring, which will review densities and policies in that area that will extend from downtown to the city's southern boundary. Next slide, please. The schedule for the adoption of these ordinances, the resolutions were adopted by the Planning Commission on January 27th with a recommendation that the City Council approve both ordinances. We're here this evening on February 17th, and we're hoping to come back for a second reading on March 7th or March 2nd, and that's tentatively scheduled. Next slide, please. This evening, it's recommended that the City Council conduct a public hearing and by motion introduce for first reading by title only, waiving full reading of the text, and ordinance amending Healdsburg Municipal Code Title 20, Section 20.2125, SB 9 Housing Development, and a second action to conduct a public hearing and by motion introduce for first reading by title only and waiving full reading of the text, and ordinance amending Healdsburg Municipal Code Section 2020-040 in its entirety, small lot subdivisions to implement Senate Bills 684 and 1123 and making other conforming changes. That concludes my presentation this evening, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. You broke down a lot of complicated material very nicely, very clearly for us, so appreciate your work. I'm going to bring it back to the council for clarifying questions before we open up the public hearing. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple. That was a lot of information. On the original Senate bills, it said no parking was required, a half-mile of transit or car share. What was that car share issue? Does that apply to us?
It doesn't really apply to us. So in some larger cities, there are car share options available. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I know that there's ways that you can get into a car and you're sharing it with somebody else, like Zipcar, for example. But we don't have that here in Healdsburg.
And then I also saw that the 20-foot driveway width. Is that a fire issue? Or in other words, if you have a single driveway, is that considered parking, or is parking excluded from that 20-foot width? How does that square in?
That's a good question. I might need to look into that a little bit further. So if we're only requiring one parking space, it would be required to be covered. So I guess potentially, depending on how this is designed.
Because I can see where you have a lot and you have a house and you have a driveway that goes back. I know that we need access for fire access to that. Are we able to determine that width prior to construction or the project approval?
That's also a good question.
Okay.
So they would be routed to fire. We route all of our projects to the fire department, so they would have an opportunity to review it.
Okay, and then we kept our object design standards to 10 feet to the second story as a setback?
Yes.
Okay, that was
Yeah.
maintained. And then have we addressed the tricky subject of fractional ownership of these? Is that still kind of something we need to work in the future?
We have not addressed that.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Thank you. This is maybe a silly question, but can they do more than one parking space?
Yes.
So that's the minimum,
That is the minimum.
not the max. Okay.
Correct.
Also, would the units of the 10 or more or 5 and above be subject to the inclusionary housing requirement?
They would be, yes.
So that's 20%
Yes.
of anything over, it's 5 and over, 5 and up?
Yes. So
Okay.
currently we have one SB 684 project in review now. It's 6 units and one of those is deed restricted.
Okay. And so, yeah, just to confirm, so the objective design standards got pulled back a bit, I guess, from concern with SB 450. And so really it's just height, lot setbacks.
Yes, it's those that are already in our code, what we require for other single-family residential.
Okay. And one last question. We talk about the ministerial approval. The city will approve or deny a complete application within 60 days of receiving it. How would we deny? What situation would we be able to deny a project?
If it doesn't meet the standards, so if it doesn't meet the standards in this code, or perhaps it doesn't meet building code standards, we would be able to deny the application.
Okay, so it would be looked at for that, but nothing else?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Kelly, do you have questions?
Yeah, thank you. So I had a question. I was reading the recent news that Sebastopol adopted, is it AB 1033? Is that the right number?
Yes.
And that they worked with a couple statewide organizations that are working on 1033, that they have like a model ordinance. And so I was asking one of our council colleagues from Sebastopol, kind of because they have a much smaller staff than we do, and similar staffing constraints in terms of other projects that they're working on. How difficult was it for their team to bring that forward? And they responded that it didn't seem like it had been that heavy of a lift at all. So I know The reason why I'm continuing to be curious about 1033 is just that because of the GMO, very few new single family homes are able to get built in Healdsburg annually, but we know that ADUs are exempt, which means more than the limited amount. And it's an option for people who, it's not the city as a developer. If we're working with an affordable housing partner, it's not these massive developments like in Mill District or Montage. It's more of like for a single family homeowner who wants to build an ADU on their own property to maximize the value and being able to sell that ADU as a separate unit. So can you talk to us a little bit more about what would be the heavy lift in moving forward with 1033, just given what we're hearing from other orgs that there's these model ordinances out there?
Yeah, we could definitely use a model ordinance, and Sebastopol is a good resource to look at. I'm thinking at this time it would probably take somewhere between 10 and probably 20 and 30 staff hours to complete something like this, and bringing it back forward to the Planning Commission and back to council as well.
I'm sorry, did you say somewhere between 10 and 30 hours?
It would be more between 20 and 30 hours.
Okay. And I know you had mentioned that no one had inquired about it, and so that's kind of what we were basing that off of. I have just anecdotally, I have heard from a lot of folks who've said, we really want the next generation to be able to move home to Healdsburg. We know of a lot of like families who are looking to buy their first home, and the median home price in Healdsburg is well out of reach for a lot of folks. And so I think knowing that ADUs typically are smaller in size, right? Because they're capped at the square footage, that, just on a dollars per square foot basis, even if it was the fanciest ADU out there, it still wouldn't be, that much more expensive just because they tend to be smaller. And so I know in a couple conversations I've had with folks locally, they have said that they would be interested in pursuing that for their own property, because they'd love to be able to, have a granny unit to move into, and, vice versa, or sell off the ADU, and that would allow them to stay in their home longer, but to be able to kind of afford to live here and continue to live here as people are aging. So I think that's an interesting tool to think about, whether it's 20 somethings wanting to move back to Healdsburg and raise families here, or seniors who want to age in place but can't afford to unless they somehow get some of the equity out of the property that they own. That's an option. But it's good to know kind of what the number of hours would be on that. And then, so you had mentioned for the adoption of the ordinance tonight, when we're talking about the ordinance that applies to both our mixed use zones, which, I guess because it's a commercial allowance in that mixed use zone, is that right? So it would be both for single family and commercial and mixed use on when that would apply?
Yes. So are you talking about the SB 684-1123 for the 10 units?
Thank you. I was like, there's so many numbers in here.
There's a lot.
Yes. 684-1123. Yes.
Yeah, it would apply to both of those, to multifamily and to single family.
And that's the one where single family has to be a vacant lot. You can't tear a building down.
Correct. It has to be a vacant lot.
And for that same one, but if it applies to a commercial or mixed use zone, does it have to be vacant, or there could be something there that gets torn down?
It doesn't have to be vacant. It doesn't specify that it needs to be vacant. And I believe I included, there is a definition included for a vacant parcel, and it's a lot which has no permanent structure unless the permanent structure is abandoned or uninhabitable.
Okay.
Would be considered a vacant lot.
But that's just for the single family.
Right.
Zoning. Does staff have any concerns about conversion of commercial property to residential and like losing that balance or mix of what we're looking for in terms of land uses, because potentially we'd be converting commercially zoned land to residential in a meaningful way?
I think that is definitely, it could be a concern. I don't see it being an issue here in Healdsburg. I think we have a lot of really established commercial zones. And it's really hard to tell how many of these projects we'll actually end up seeing.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Okay, Councilmember Higley?
Yeah, I think, I mean, we're kind of limited on what we can do here, correct?
That is correct.
And I'll just say again, I'm looking at the map, page 12 from the last meeting's conversation where we were talking about the smart area plan and the half mile. I mean, that goes all the way up to Rec Park, takes in the south or the north lots on Piper Street. I mean, all the way down, includes all of Kennedy. I mean, it's a pretty big swath that is included. And I know there's this utopian dream of everybody's going to ride trains and buses, but I mean, eliminating parking within a half mile seems very extreme, in my opinion, as somebody that's got 2 kids that have events in different directions and, you know, having to be places. So I think, you know, I mean, this is a perfect example of what we're dealing with tonight is basically the state is coming down because a lot of cities haven't been as proactive as others in producing housing, that now we have a one size fits all. And I struggle with that, you know, yeah, the more bike friendly we can make the city, the better. And the more people can get out of their cars. But ultimately, if people need cars, we're trying to get them to switch to EVs, and EVs need a place to park. And so anyway, that's really, I guess, more of a comment. Like, the question was, there's not a whole lot that we can do at this stage, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I shared my frustration with this.
Okay, I have a couple quick questions. The design standards, I'm curious what the role of the Planning Commission was in defining or adjusting those or including those, as opposed to what came in from the state. Can you just give us a brief overview on their role in that aspect of these ordinances?
Sure. So when we had originally brought forward SB 9 and 684 and 1123, I had actually come up with a longer list of objective standards. And I spoke with the attorney and learned about SB 450, which essentially eliminated our ability to put any objective standards on these projects. So nothing could be more restrictive than what's required in the code already. So whatever that underlying zoning district is, those are the standards that we can apply to that specific project. We want to make sure that those are called out and that those are included so that we're not seeing anything that's higher, taller than our normal allowable height limits. We want to still make sure we have those step backs that are required for other single family homes. So if you have a single family home, setbacks for the first story are 5 feet. And then if you have a second story, it's required to be stepped in an additional 5 feet. So it's 10 feet from the property lines. So just to maintain consistency and continuity in our neighborhoods, just bringing in those standards
Okay,
to the ordinances.
Thank you. On the GMO slide, it mentions that HCD would not provide a definitive answer if GMO applies to these projects. So they hinted that they might, but at what point do we find out how they would rule, with some of these projects? Would that be after we adopt the ordinance or when the project is actually up for review and so on? How do you see that playing out?
I don't know that we'll ever get a definitive answer from them. They didn't provide one, and it took a while to get that response from them. So it's really unclear, I guess, what the ruling would be in that situation.
But there would be one at some point, right? And they'd have to make up their mind.
I would think so.
Yeah, my take on that is they really don't. Ultimately, they're sort of washing their hands of the question, and it'll be left to us to administer the policy. It's not like they get to review individual projects. So unfortunately, they may never give us a clear answer.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. So if we have any members of the public who'd like to speak on this item, please come forward. Welcome.
Hello there. Dan Pizza, Kennedy Lane, part of the Presidential Estates 90 moderate homes, which are in the half-mile radius of the train station. Anyhow, from what I heard, these rolls go back to what, 2022? So my first question is, why now? It seems like this is an end around to Measure O being defeated. If you ever wanted to get something like this through, you mentioned an exemption. The only exemption I think you're going to get is if you go to the voters again. And this time you'd have to have more guardrails in that clusterfuck from last time, excuse my language. You're going to need to have limits, not unlimited building. I'd like to see, once again, where they're going to be built. So like I say, this is almost offensive when you were defeated soundly on Measure O, and now you're coming back with this, which, like I say, looks like just an end around. Once again, it's for multifamily units, which change the character of the town that everybody loves. So if you want to try it again, good luck. But as far as having an exemption, I don't think so. Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment? Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, staff. I am here from Generation Housing, and we're imploring staff to relook at SB 10, which streamlines upzoning process per statute and is completely CEQA exempt, including at the project level when combined with AB 130 and SB 131. This is in your housing element. The county and the city of Santa Rosa are planning to bring it forward, and we will offer our technical assistance and be happy to work with the city to find additional outside help. These are also exempt from the GMO. After all the work that you did do to pass Measure O, it is surprising that the city is not jumping at the chance to move SB 10 and AB 1033 forward. So once again, we would be happy to help you with especially AB 1033 and making those connections, and SB 10 as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council. I think it makes sense to tackle the request for direction on SB 10 and 1033 first, and then we can move into the ordinances unless anybody else has another suggestion. Why don't we go ahead and discuss those items first? I understand that you do still need some direction on that.
Yes.
On those points. So let's start with that, please. Go ahead.
Given that we really have very little, if any, discretion on these two items, SB 9 and 684 and 1123, I'm not sure what further discussion we can have at this point. I think we ought to go ahead and make the motion.
And I think with SB 10, I think that we agreed when we were doing things that we had goal setting, and goal setting is next month. And I think that instead of sliding something in the SB 10 now, that maybe add that to goals so that city manager and staff would have time when we're looking at our large plan instead of keep sliding small things in. And regards to the two items, these are things that the state is putting on cities. These are not things that cities are trying to determine. All we can do is, the state said it has to go through. We heard it. We sent it to the Planning Commission to set the rules in our ordinances. So all we're really doing tonight is the best we can with the state forced ordinances. So with that, I would like to I'll hear from somebody.
Councilmember Kelly, you already spoke on that a bit already, but if you'd like to add some comments on the direction to staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was a question from public comment as to why we're implementing this now. And I think that the answer is because we have to. Staff has been working, behind the scenes feverishly to ensure that we have followed state law and that we're not in violation of state law. And that's why it's coming forward tonight, not because, I think staff has been working on this since the moment it got adopted at the state. So, and then, sorry, Mayor, to your question, yes, I think it's been no secret that I think both SB 10 and AB 1033 are both unique tools in the complex housing toolbox that we need to employ to be able to have kind of a variety of options available in the community. I respectfully, hear from Ellen that there are a variety of competing priorities happening at the planning department. And so, I want to see us be able to advance those. I think these will be individual housing mechanisms that people within our community can leverage, both for their own ability to stay housed and to, take equity out of their property or have their kids or grandkids move home and buy a condo from them. So I think those are exciting opportunities for individuals to be able to explore, just like when we first adopted an ADU ordinance and we said, is anyone going to build one of these granny units? We have no idea what's an ADU. And then all of a sudden, here we are probably a decade later, and it's one of our most, impactful housing tools for infill development inside of neighborhoods that we have for people to be able to add ADUs. So this, I think, is just kind of taking it to the next level in terms of people being able to purchase them separately and in an affordable way. So, and not deed restricted way. This isn't government subsidy involved. This is just individuals being able to build things on their own properties and make money and sell them for housing for other people. So I like the flexibility of that, because so much of what we do is, deed restricted and has more government control on it that I think is necessary for housing to have the flexibility it needs. So with that, I hear the competing priorities. I think obviously we are launching into the the station area plan. And thanks to those grant funds, we're going to have an amazing consulting team helping our city staff do it, but it still is a lift. So I'd like to see us proceed with giving direction that we want to have the next set of housing policies after we've hopefully adopted these two tonight, to move into analyzing those and adopting them for Healdsburg.
Okay. Do you have any other comments on this? No? Okay. So I'd just add that I think the staff recommendation is solid, and I do have interest in SB 10 and 1033 and hope that with the time we're going to need to take with the station area plan, we'll have a clear idea of how effective those would be as other cities look at them. But I think probably the time is not right for that just now. But it is good to know that these options are there for us to explore, and probably we'll have a better idea of how to proceed with those. But not until we've tackled the big one in front of us right now. So does that give you the direction you need on that section of this?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, and then so let's go ahead and move back to the two ordinances before us. Regularly?
So I'd like to make a motion that we introduce for first reading by title only, waiving full reading of the text, and ordinance amending Healdsburg Municipal Code Title 20 to add sections 20.20.125 SB 9 housing development.
Second.
All right, can we have a roll call vote on that, please?
Councilmember Higley?
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly?
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards?
Yes.
Mayor Herod?
Yes. And then we have another ordinance.
I'd like to introduce first reading by title only, waive full reading of text and ordinance amending Healdsburg Municipal Code Title 20, Section 20.20.040, small lot subdivisions, and replacing with Section 20.20.040, title Small Lot Subdivision and Housing Developments, to implement SB 684 and SB 1123.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Higley,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor Harrod.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to old business now. We're going to have our L&M Village quarterly report with Housing Director Steven Sotomayor and Reach for Home Executive Director Margaret Slyke. Welcome back.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, Steven Sotomayor, Housing Director. Today, we're presenting the L&M quarterly update, and if we could jump to the next slide. But I think at the foremost of our minds right now is about funding for the L&M. So I'd like to start by talking about the Board of Supervisors action that took place last week, in which the city applied for Measure O funding through a NOFA that was issued in October. We applied for $999,000, but received $900,000 of that split between HAP and Measure O funding. This funding was approved by the board. And so this, it's important to note that this funding actually reimburses us for most of our expenses in the year 25. It may carry over a little bit into 26. And I say that because this is positive news because it avoids an immediate funding gap. But we are still in the same place where we don't have a multi-year contract and we are still moving forward, hoping that more funding becomes available. I do want to mention that during the board discussion, I was able to attend. I provided public comment to ask for support also for ongoing funding. Largely, many members of the board cautioned those that were there to receive their awards that funding is becoming more and more rare and that Measure O is becoming more and more constrained. So the tone wasn't necessarily optimistic. I do want to say that Supervisor Gore did mentioned that he remembered the commitment that the county made in 2021, and he asked the Director of Health Services, Nolan Sullivan, to come back with a presentation to talk about not only that funding commitment, but what they can do. So that is something that doesn't have a date today, but was expressed by our representative on the board to be a future discussion item, which is hopeful that we'll be able to hear a little bit more about that. We are, because of this, also looking at alternate sources of funding that may be available coming up while we have this money for 25. A lot of Proposition 1 funding that goes to the Department of Health Services for mental health services actually was changed, and starting in 2026, some of that money, approximately about $9 million, will be made available for housing, specifically for those experiencing chronic homelessness. So that is one source that we are in discussions with the county to look at potentially for these home key projects that cater towards interim housing for chronically homeless. In addition, there's a bill in the state currently in progress that would reauthorize HAP, which is a major funding source for homeless services, to the tune of about $500 million. But it has a new provision to it that's in that bill that says that now counties or COCs or whoever receives the fund must pass those through to smaller cities. So there's a little bit of a shining light at the end of the tunnel. It's not anywhere near completion, but the bill around HAP, which has been a major funder for the L&M Village since we have started, is one positive aspect. The money through Proposition 1 may be another avenue. And right now, we waiting a contract, but we were awarded the money to cover 25 and a little bit of 26 potentially. So I just wanted to start with that. And then in addition, that's not the only money we got. In fact, the North County ended up with about $1.55 million because Reach for Home, recognizing that this Measure O NOFA may be a limited program, applied with the cities of Windsor and Cloverdale for additional funding, which I'll hand off to Margaret to talk about.
Yeah, so the encampment resolution funding that we've had for the past 3 years that has helped us immensely with the SIAR properties and all of the work that's been done there ends at the end of June. And so seeing that it's ending in June and knowing that we have master lease interim housing, as well as upkeep and maintenance of the Caffaretta House, which that money paid for, we went ahead and applied for Measure O funding to keep and sustain all of that. So we don't have a gap in funding. All the things that the encampment resolution funding did, we'll have for at least another year through the Measure O funding. And Windsor approached Reach for Home and asked if in conjunction with Cloverdale, they could help apply for it with us. So knowing that the city of Healdsburg was applying for the Measure O funding for the L&M, they applied for this extra money to continue the interim housing expansion. So the L&M has 22 units, and with this other funding, we have 46 units, I think. Yes, 46 is currently where we're at. It also included some funding to expand that by about 3 to 6 units, including some housing in Healdsburg that the town is potentially going to make available to all of northern Sonoma County through Reach for Home. So that's a lot of an infusion, I feel, into these 3 towns to help us sustain what we've been doing and to sustain where we are.
So it really is truly, I mean, what started as, with the L&M Village has expanded into a regional effort that has expanded housing across Windsor and Cloverdale as well, supporting an entire network. And so this money that ERF was paying for being added into the Measure O and the HAP funding will actually be able to sustain that effort for a little bit longer. So that is positive news, but still I caution that with the future. With the comments from the supervisors, which state that Measure O is overly taxed and we are potentially may not see such a NOFA come out again. This one was for $10 million. We may not, they've cautioned that that might not be the case. But I did want to report on the positive news that at least we did receive that award that we applied for back in October. And with that, I will hand it over to our regularly scheduled programming with the rest of the L&M quarterly update, and I'll hand it off to Margaret.
Yeah, so the highlights are up there on that slide, and we can go to the next slide. There we go. So like I just mentioned, and I'm sorry, I'm at the age where I need readers and can't see anyway, so I'll be taking them on and off. Interim housing units, as I just said, we're at about 46. We're looking to add at least 3 more units with the Measure O funding that we got through Cloverdale and Windsor, and potentially a couple more depending on, how everything goes. Keep People Housed helped over 42 households. Reach for Home was the hub of that program, or the spoke, I guess you'd say, up here in northern Sonoma County. So 42 households in northern Sonoma County got $111,500 last year through that program. It is a pilot program, so we're looking at what's going to happen with that funding at the end of the year. It could go away or dramatically get reduced. And so we're gearing up to apply for private funding if that gap occurs, because it's clearly needed in northern Sonoma County. We also used about $30,000 additional dollars through private funding and donors to supplement with more housing assistance. So housing deposits, helping to pay rent where people are behind and they're getting to the point where they're going to get a 60-day notice. The point in time count, I have a lot of my presentation actually is going to be around the point in time count and kind of where we're at with everything. So it happened about 3 weeks ago, and now I have to put my readers on because I have some notes here just so I can get the numbers right. These are all preliminary numbers. So when the point in time count official results get out in late July or August, they could be slightly different. When we see an encampment and we say we don't know exactly how many people are maybe in a tent or in a car, there is a multiplier on the back end. It's an algorithm average. So that's where it can sometimes add a few more people or something like that. So the count itself included unsheltered guides, staff from Reach for Home, the county, and other volunteers that went out. It was the second year in a row where we were able to use our by names list data to match up what we were seeing in that one point in time count moment. So we have our by names list, which I've talked a lot about, that fluctuates sometimes daily. If someone's leaves Healdsburg or leaves Windsor and goes to Santa Rosa and we haven't seen them for 3 months, they come off, maybe someone else goes on, but it's a real accurate, real-time way to kind of know who's out there and what their needs are. So for the second year, we've been able to take that list and kind of go out with it and count the people we know are there and make sure we're not missing anybody. So it was pretty successful. We were within just a couple of people from what we counted and what the volunteers went out and found versus what we have on our by names list. We had a total of 7 people that we counted in Healdsburg. Some of those might actually end up as county, because that's another thing. When you log someone in the app, if you're standing on county property, it's county. If you're in Healdsburg, it's Healdsburg. So there's a lot of kind of crossover in the city. So 4 of them were in town. 3 of them were actually under the Caltrans area, kind of adjacent to SIAR. So there are 3 people over there. So that was the 7. We think it's probably a little bit of an undercount, but we think we're pretty close based on the people we know and we have names for. Total, around 39 were counted in all of northern Sonoma County, and we have 47 on our list. So for the whole thing, we think we might have about 8 that we just couldn't find that day, but we know they're there. So the next thing we're working on is getting to functional zero. We've talked a lot about it. I know in all of my reports, I've mentioned it, and you've heard about it a lot. We're at the point now where we need to take the people on our list and categorize who's chronic, who's literally homeless, and who are the people that we're just going to have a really hard time at this point housing, to kind of know what our inflow is going to be, our inflow outflow, and what is our baseline threshold going to be for functional zero in northern Sonoma County. So we did that exercise, and we have 27 chronically homeless individuals that are, and these don't count people in our interim housing program. These are just the people who are literally on the streets right now. So we have 27 in northern Sonoma County, 11 who are literally homeless, meaning they haven't been homeless for over a year or they don't have some sort of a disability. And then we have about 9 people who are just really hard to house right now. That doesn't mean that they might get rehab or they might change their mind. But right now, for various reasons, we have 9 people that we can't house right now. And some of them, 2 of them are just people who don't want to talk to anybody. So there's 2 of those types of people. So we're just trying to get a really good grasp on what we can do next to get to functional zero. So that's kind of where we are right now. The important thing to note in all of this is we've built a system that soon will help us maintain functional zero. But we have to keep that system in place. So the case managers we have right now, they're just going to shift to case managing permanent housing versus interim, because people who are chronically homeless, especially the people that we've been housing over the past few years, have been homeless for 10, 15 years. They're going to need support for a long-term future. These are not people who might be successful just leaving them in housing and saying, well, they're housed, we're going to walk away. We don't want we don't want people to fall backwards. So we have the system, it's working, we just need to keep pushing through. And I think that's about all I have on my list for that. But I just wanted to give you that update. And so I think most of what I just covered was on the slide. We do have a staffing update. Our housing navigator property manager left for a career in mental health. So we hired within, and now we're backfilling that case manager position. And then Russian River Keepers continues to clean the river. We had the 2 final people who we were having a hard time housing off of SIAR come in, and their camps are being clear. We do have the 3 people who were housed who fell out of housing back on the Caltrans property. So this is an example of how we have to keep that system in place. So we're out there, we're working with them, we're trying to get them back in. So technically speaking, at one point, every single person who was on SIAR was off. Now we have 3 that are under the bridge. So it's just, that's the new state of normal, is to just continue to be there to help people and to encourage them to come in and to work with them. So that's where we are with that. And Russian River Keeper is still working with us and coming in. As soon as people come in, they help clean the camp out and make sure that the river stays clean. And they're still a partner of ours. Next slide. I think that's all I have, and I'll turn it back over to Stephen.
Sure. So these are just the updated numbers that we have since the last quarterly report. And you can see since the last report, the number of participants served through these different categories consistently still intake, and people accessing services which are listed out continue to be the same. But it's still progress moving forward. As Margaret mentioned, there's a general shift of what do you do when you start getting to the point that numbers are starting to dwindle as far as number of people that are chronically homelessness. And that's a conversation that we're starting to talk about. But these numbers just reflect the difference between the last report and then again, the totals since the program started.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, actually, this was probably my slide, but I would say the big thing on here to note is the 0 under housing vouchers. We have no housing vouchers. There are project-based vouchers for specific projects like Dry Creek coming and Heritage Housing in Windsor. But there are no individual housing vouchers and haven't been for a year. So we've decreased the number without any housing vouchers going to any individual people, which has been, it's not been easy. And we don't think there will be housing vouchers for at least 3 more years. So it's the new normal. Next slide. And this number has stayed consistent. Nothing has really changed. We are continuing to serve the people who represent Healdsburg. So nothing has really changed in this category. So you can go to the next slide. And then these are just to remind everybody, we always put this slide up. These are the things that we offer at the L&M Village on a regular basis. And so we just always kind of put it up here to remind everybody or to educate new people who might not be as familiar with the L&M that see this presentation. Next slide. Now it's Stephen's turn.
So this would just be a recap of what I started with. If you notice on the bottom, the thing that changes the measure O, pathways to sustainability. At the time that I put these slides together, we didn't know if it passed, but it did. And that's the update to this slide. Next slide.
And really the challenges are the same, aside from housing vouchers, which we can't control. Additional interim housing units, permanent supportive housing units, unrestricted funding, multi-year contracts are always good. I think one thing too right now is looking at the shift and when that shift is going to start to happen between our interim housing program, not just the L&M, but these other units we have, at what point can we start to flip them to being permanent supportive housing? And, just kind of making sure that people are ready for that switch, because once that flips, they're now in a lease. And if they're in the lease and they're not successful in that lease, then they get an eviction. And then they're not chronic, and then they have to wait a year, and it's a whole mess. So we just want to be really careful about not putting people into permanent housing too quickly before they're ready, because it can be a more traumatic and arduous process on the back end of that if they're not ready. So that's kind of a challenge right now too, is kind of we're at the point where we need to start looking at that with each individual person. Opportunities, employment connections, Dry Creek Common set-asides. Heritage Park in Windsor is going to have, I believe, 8 units that are coordinated entry units, which we'll qualify to apply for. Coordinated entry is county-wide, so there's a good possibility some people could end up in those units that aren't homeless in northern Sonoma County, but the people who are here can select to be in those units. And we'll be providing case management at Reach for Home for those units. So we're heavily involved in that project as well, just like Dry Creek Common. And yeah, that's it.
So if there's any questions, we're happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Before we get to questions, comments, I'm going to open it up to a public comment first. And so if there's anybody who'd like to speak on this item, come forward. Welcome.
Hi there. I'm Dan Pizza, and I live across the street from the homeless highway. First, I just want to clarify something that was said in an earlier discussion with the Director of Housing. We won the Proactive Housing Award from the state back in late 2024. And in a discussion with you, you told me we had met all requirements through 2030. Earlier tonight, Ariel said that we need to take action with more multifamily housing in order to meet state requirements. I'm under the impression that we met those already, at least through 2030. So if you can tell me if I'm correct or not, but I remember you told me that at a meeting. Anyhow, back to the homeless. As I said, I live across the street from the homeless highway, which goes to the Sire property. And I guess we got 2.7 million at the end of 2023. And I walked back there last week and I saw evidence of at least 6 camps. And I also saw one camp that's been there for, I'd say, a decade. So I've kind of given up on whether or not they're going to ever leave or not. But I would like to know why we are permitting the same people to stay there, making open fires, dumping garbage, using the river as their toilet, and basically inviting more campers to come in. It was down to just 2 or 3, but now it's back up to a half dozen. I don't understand it. I mean, there's care court, there's evictions, there's a lot of options, but tell me why, besides they don't want to leave, why we've let this person stay here year after year after year. And, you know, I'd be happy with an explanation. I'd be even more happy if they were gone. Thank you very much. Oh, and as far as having functional zero homelessness, there is functional zero homelessness, and it's at all of your homes, but in your neighborhoods. You don't have homeless in your neighborhoods. I have them walking by my house every day. I have them stealing my mail. My neighbor has them taking showers with their hose and dumping their garbage across the street from me. This is my problem. I realize it's not yours, but I've been coming here for 6 years talking about it, and it's still not fixed. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anybody else for public comment, so we'll bring it back. Do you want to address those questions first before we discuss this?
I can take the pro-housing question. So the pro-housing program by the state of California is not an award that you win, but it's a policy document that you qualify for. So if you have existing policies like what we talked about today with these different land use codes, we had, you know, the policies that the state identified in place. It's policies, not necessarily housing production. In that document, we also agreed to do additional policies, which is ongoing work. Much like our housing element outlines our policies and procedures, your pro-housing designation is something that you continue to work towards and meet goals. So it's not necessarily an end state as much as it is a commitment to continue housing progress under certain programs. So I think that's a little bit different than like a RENA number and saying that we met our RENA. Well, RENA comes every 8 years, and every year it gets a little bit more. So there's not really a goal line, if we would say. People still need housing, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and as far as the Sire property goes, you know, we know that there are 3 people that are under the Caltrans bridge at this point. I know Russian Riverkeeper has been working on cleaning up some of the other camps. There were, like I said, 2 people, maybe 3, that were enforced. So it has been a great partnership with the Sheriff's Department. I do think the city of Healdsburg has done a great job at pressuring the Sheriff's Department to come and help enforce. And what that has helped us do with the 3 people that just came in is that helped them make that choice for themselves. And it's helped us have time to help them. And so while I'm not a huge advocate of putting people in jail or something like that for being unsheltered, I don't think it should be criminalized. At the same time, sometimes enforcing can really help people to make that choice. So that is how those 3 people came in, was the partnership with the Sheriff's Department. And I believe that kind of emulated from the city of Healdsburg. So we appreciate that because now they are in. And like I said, it's going to be a constant. It's going to be constant. We're going to have to keep on it, keep street outreach there, keep those relationships built, and continuously offer housing to people who are there. And the people who are there right now were in housing before, so just trying to get them back. And I think that's where we are. And we're going to just keep working on it. We're not going to let it go. So we're not going to give up.
Thank
That's where
you.
we are.
Okay, questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Higley.
Yeah, it's nice to see where we are today, considering where we started and the kind of the overlapping funding requests and the initial meeting, 10 some years ago that we had about bringing the different nonprofits together and try to get coordinated on accessing funding to, everything that happened to get to where we are in context of where we were at some of the worst periods that we had. I guess my question is, in all of this, we've been very successful where we were able to buy the L&M Motel. We have, our community has supported, funding for affordable housing, which we're able to use. And we've been, because of the success of everything that you've been doing and Reach for Home's been doing, we've been able to get additional grant funding. And I guess my question is, what's the exit? I mean, ultimately the goal is, I don't want to see something where we're just constantly funding for the next 50 years, units everywhere that just keep going and going. We've already heard there's an end of shelf life and what we're looking at with funding options. So I kind of wanted to hear kind of your hopeful message. We talk about functional zero and what you see Reach for Home. Where do you see it in 5 years? And then maybe 10 years, if you can look out that far, like what are we looking at in the future with, the funding? Is there a way to start? I like your idea of getting people into permanent housing. Completely agree. We don't want to do it too fast because then you're back at the line. I get all that. We're having success. What does that look like the next 5 years and 10 years?
That's a great question. And if I had a crystal ball, no. I do think, though, kind of what our next steps are is just continuing the system we have and making sure that we don't pull back on it too soon. I'm hopeful that down the road, in 5 years, it'll be more prevention. So we're still going to have case managers working with people, but I'm hopeful that at some point we'll be spending more on keeping people in their housing than on, needing to have a lot of subsidized housing, because hopefully in 5 years we'll have some more housing vouchers. There'll be other tools. And the city is focused on getting more affordable housing. The whole conversation I just listened to was that. So, I'm hopeful that down the road we'll be able to have less interim housing. I'm not sure that the funding is going to look a lot different. It might, because we might not need quite as many programs to kind of stand up that interim housing, because the good news is if we can get to functional zero for chronic homelessness, literally homeless individuals are a little bit easier to house because they haven't been homeless for as long. So we might not need as many programs. We can cut back on some things. But we have the system, and we're going to need that system for as long as I know, until we don't. It's kind of a hard question to answer. And I think that as a community and as Northern Sonoma County, we have to just keep our eyes on it. And when we can peel something off, we'll slowly peel it off. And we're just going to have to do it when it makes sense. And it's hard to really say what 5 years from now looks like. I know I can say with pretty good confidence that from 5 years from now, you shouldn't see very many people who don't have housing, which was our ultimate goal. And we're getting there. We every year have had a decrease. And the 9 people that are really hard to house, I think, we might have a few of those, because that's going to involve the county and a lot of other resources that we can't control necessarily.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I think, all of us like hearing the individual success stories. That's really what we're here to try to help people get on their feet so that they can get off the system and sustain themselves and things like that. And so, just thank you for everything that you're doing. And just in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, what's next? What are we looking beyond? I don't want just turning the same. So I appreciate that we're kind of looking toward beyond functional zero.
Yeah, I mean, one of the conversations that Stephen and I have been talking a lot about is, how many units of interim housing will we need long-term? All of those conversations. And I think it's a little early to put a number on it yet, but those are conversations we're having. And we're to the point where at the L&M, at what point can we move to do literally homeless individuals there as well? Because right now it's for chronic. So that conversation has started to happen. So little incremental changes will kind of get us a better idea over time of the answer to your question, I think.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Yeah, I want to add my thanks to the work you all have been doing. It's amazing. Ever since I've been on council, this has obviously been an issue, and I've been on many, many committees and conversations. And to find us at a moment where we're talking about functional zero and next steps is pretty great. It's almost hard to believe, and trust at this point. So I know that there's ways to slip back the way you've talked. But yeah, I just want to say how inspiring it is that we're at this point now here. I don't know if this is a countywide, if the county is doing as well as this North County. Maybe that's a question. Do you know their situation at this point?
Yeah, the philosophy of functional zero and of Built for Zero is being worked on countywide. It is a countywide initiative. I think that maybe Rohnert Park in that area is getting close. Also, I think that they're kind of where we are maybe. Is it?
I can jump in. In the last homeless count, we did see a reduction across the county as well. So I think what we saw was a lot of the home key projects kind of catching up to speed. And you'll notice the communities that did implement that where there wasn't interim shelter before really saw a huge reduction. And I think that's one of the challenges too, is that we were so successful in getting project home key projects that the maintenance of effort that comes afterwards seems a little bit overwhelming when you have that much infrastructure, but it did show results. But I think in the North County, we've had the largest or the most significant drop in the percentage of homeless year after year within the entire county.
And I just want to ask about Measure O money. That's a tax, right? And last I heard, there was a lot of money that had been accumulated in that, and they're just now starting to distribute it. And that money will continue. It's not based on the federal government, right? So why is it running out so quickly?
So, I was able to, kind of discuss this with Director of Health Services, and what he demonstrated to me or indicated to me is that a lot of that money, for example, what I mentioned about the state shifting money to housing that used to go to behavioral health services is going to have to be backfilled somewhere. And so Measure O, what he demonstrated in the future years, is really heavy towards the behavioral health, towards care facilities for mental health. The county is planning to expand those, and those all take different types of funding. So, one way to look at it is if the county is taking on those with the issue, with mental health issues that are much at a higher level than what local providers can do, that they're actually reducing the amount of people with chronic homelessness or mental health issues that are actually that we would have to serve. But at the same time, it doesn't allow for a lot of money to go towards, direct homeless services like what we're providing, which Measure O, I believe, is 2% of that fund is dedicated towards homeless services. We were awarded mainly the HAP funding. We only received about 120 of Measure O. So it is, distributed differently. We got HAP funding because they knew we could spend it because we already did. We're getting reimbursed. But that kind of demonstrates that it wasn't a huge award out of Measure O for us. It was truly a mix of different funding sources. So by his, presentation on that, he's indicated that it's pretty much over the next couple of years already kind of spoken for.
And I guess so, if the county is helping the people who have the highest level of mental illness and issues, that in theory, can help us with the people that we're dealing with
I
in the
think
homelessness?
Yeah, it's got to be a parallel process, right? One can't really exist without the other. But the question is like what we're talking about: how many interim units do we need? How many permanent? How do we redirect these in the future to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the community? Is probably the same question that we're having around how much behavioral health beds do we need versus how many interim beds do we need. So it's not a static number, and that's the challenging part, is that year after year it changes, and year after year we don't quite know where the next funding source is coming from. So it's hard to answer why these numbers are kind of changing, but Measure O, is they frequently like to remind us, was mainly for behavioral health, mental health.
Understood, yeah. Well, and I just want to commend you for being proactive here, seeing the future, knowing that, like with Councilmember Hagley's question, like what's the next 5 years look like? You're already thinking about that. And I think that's really important too, because it's going to change all the time now. We've already seen that. I don't know, did we expect this good of a result when we first walked down this path? Probably not, right?
I think we generally felt like we would be funded through the Measure O NOFA, as we were directed to do that in light of the resolution that the county passed in 2021, the operational funding framework, which said, hey, we're going to have money for you for home key. And subsequently after that, we every year write the county and say, we have this resolution, we'd like some money, and we've been awarded. This time they directed us towards this one-time NOFA, which is a little more scary than what we were in before.
I was extremely hopeful about the Project Home Key funding. I was not expecting necessarily the other $650,000 to help continue the ERF funding, but it's going to really help. I mean, we would have had to have divested in a lot of master leases, and those people would have been back on the streets.
Great, thank you, and thank you for your work. As I said, appreciate it.
Councilmember Kelly.
No additional comments. I agree with everything that my colleagues have said, and just really appreciate the work and the commitment from Stephen and the folks at Reach for Home. I am just continue to be blown away with how incredible the progress that you guys are making. Homelessness is such a complicated issue, multifaceted. People become homeless and remain homeless for so many different reasons, and we've seen it continue to really make it difficult for a lot of other communities to navigate. And I feel like we are so lucky and fortunate at this juncture to have an amazing partner like Reach for Home, and that the county is going to continue to fund this work and this important shelter that we entered into this agreement knowing that the county would be there with us, and it's been quite the tricky relationship to continue to navigate, but we also can continue to remind them that our residents are paying that quarter-cent sales tax that funds Measure O, and so getting our fair share of those resources back to North County is also appropriate and necessary. So thank you all.
Vice Mayor Edwards.
Yeah, I hope you could help me understand a little bit here, is that I really don't get, let's just cut vouchers off, how that really solves anything. But since we're in that situation, with the number of low income, I don't know if we've got enough very low income, that what money that people you help receive without vouchers, will that be enough to sustain them in a very low income unit and be able to survive? Is that will we reach that? In other words, I know we've got a few units coming in at Dry Creek. You mentioned Windsor's got some coming in. I know Cloverdale's got some in the pipeline. Will those, at some point, will that low income subsidies that they are getting and I guess entitled to by law that can't just be cut, will that be able to sustain those people? Or are we just are we really just moving this problem forward? We're getting them housed and then, oops, sorry, you're out.
So let me see if I understand. So the housing, the interim housing units, not the L&M, but the other units that I'm talking about, your question is, will that subsidy be able to sustain them? Without a voucher. Without a voucher. And the answer is if we can continue to find the funding. Because right now, they're 100% subsidized. They have no income. And we're working with them to try to increase their income by not only social services, by jobs and training and trying to help them. Like, for example, right now there's a small group trying to start a micro business of art, wood clocks. Like, I mean, we're trying to help them find creative ways to make money to help increase their income. Right now, those units are 100% subsidized, and without the Measure O funding, we would only be able to sustain part of them. So the answer is no. Without private funding or without grant money, we would not have the money to sustain the other units at this point.
So like disability is not enough in this county, in our environment to survive. Okay, great,
No,
great to
not at
understand
all.
that where some areas it can.
Yeah. You know, and so if we can increase the income, which is what we're working on in the case management, and it kind of goes also to the comment earlier, like, where do you see us in 5 years? You know, if we can continue to try to increase income for each person, which is one of the goals of our program, then, you know, there'll be a meeting in the middle where they'll have a little income and we'll need less subsidy, you know? So we're hoping to kind of continue that pattern. But we're working with humans who have disabilities and different mental health issues. So it's not always easy.
It was nice to hear that you're developing small businesses, because I know that was one of the things you were talking about, of having classes, trying to get them going forward in entrepreneurism. And that really is a good way to help them establish and really get back into being contributing members of society. I wanted to dive into some ugliness here. In 2024, the Heller situation where we had a difference in law enforcement being able to come in. How is that working? In other words, the sheriff now has the ability to contact these people. We're humans. We're not able to just reprogram us and send us on our way. What practically does it look like when we've all reached, some of us have reached out to the sheriff, the city has reached out, you've reached out, our police chief. It's always, well, it's their area of responsibility. But now it seems like the sheriff is there. What actually happens when the sheriff goes to the river, contacts a person? What happens after that? Because we've got a resident that's not seeing any results. So I'm curious. I think he has a question of what's going on, what's taking place. How does this move forward?
Right. So with the original people that were there, that were part of the original group, what happened is the sheriff would come and they would cite the individuals. They went multiple times, cited them multiple times. And then after multiple sightings, it's my understanding, and this is just what I've been told. I wasn't standing there, you know, when it happened. So I apologize if this is a little off, but my understanding is that at some point they give them a time certain that they need to clear and get off of the property. And so what has been happening is, as the sheriff does that, our street outreach worker, as well as Russian River Keeper, they're actually doing outreach work also. They're not just clearing trash, but they have relationships with these individuals. And so they're coming in behind and also helping to try to nudge them into interim housing. We have rooms on hold at the L&M that we kept open for probably 2 months while this process happened, until we could get them to make that choice to come in, and they finally did. But it takes several months for some people. And the other alternative is they get arrested, taxpayer dollars, they go to jail, right? And then when they get out in 30 or 60 days or whatever, because it's, you know, not that big of an offense, they will just go right back. So we're really trying to work with law enforcement, and they've been very helpful in getting people to the point where they will try to come to the L&M and just give it a try. And then when they're there, give them all the supports necessary to make it to where they want to continue and they want to work towards housing. So I think in a nutshell, that's kind of how it's been working. The people that were referenced earlier are people that were in the program that decided to leave or that had to take a break. And so we need to now continue to do that and bring them back in. I mean, that's just part of what we're going to have to keep doing.
And so when you say a citation, I mean, if you have nothing If you say, I've got to give you $1,000, I can laugh at you and going like, where are you going to get that from? I know that I asked you this question before, is that there is a process that if they do come in, go through the program, does the court reduce that, or does that money stay out over their head as an impediment?
Interesting that you should ask. There was in this round, in this particular situation, someone was asking us to do that for them before they got in. And we were like, if you come in, we will help you with that. But we're, you can't be there. Like, it's not okay. And so, but if you come in, yes, we will definitely help them if they come in.
So really the alternatives that we have now are the sheriff can go put them in jail for 30 or 60 days.
Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever that time
I don't
is,
know
it's
the
out
law.
of sight, but they're going to come back somewhere.
Most of them will go right back where they were because that's where they're.
And is there a court, then is there through care court, is there any court orders that say you need to go through a program?
So care court is something that everyone has talked a lot about recently, and Stephen might be able to chime in more than me, but the program was not really funded and it wasn't set up appropriately, and there's very few diagnoses that qualify. And I know that at the county level, they're looking to try to expand that. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I was going to add back to the original question about the process with the sheriff, and I think it's important to note that multiple touches tend to work a lot better. It's more convincing. I think, an experience that we had a while back was just behind the gas station on the on-ramp. We had a large encampment, and the CHP came through, did not notify Reach for Home until about maybe like a day before. Cleared the encampment, told everybody to leave, and the next call we get is there's a bunch of people on the plaza. And so I think that there's a balance here that if it takes a few touches, it'd be nice if the sheriffs went and then that day the problem instantly disappeared. But I think to make sure that we don't exasperate the problem in other areas or just relocate issues is to make sure that that process takes place. In Los Angeles, we had like a 72-hour notice period that gave people enough time to at least seek housing. And I think that's an important thing to say, is that we just don't want to shift the problem around.
Yeah, I think these conversations are good because, if you're the general public, you hear, oh, there's this care program, there's this program, it should all just work smoothly. But what we're hearing is that it's actually more detailed than that. And a lot of these programs are put out there, like the housing, where the state says you got to do it, but there's no funding for it.
Well, and with care court, for example, I think that you have to be not just schizophrenic, but when it rolled out, one type of that, like there was a subtype of schizophrenia and you had to qualify that way. And then there really weren't, like the funding wasn't there. But I know that it is something that, from what I've heard, the county is looking at to expand.
Okay, yeah, and you guys are doing a good job. I just wanted to dive into this a little bit better because, if you're not at every of these meetings for 3 hours or so, how long they take, that you don't hear these deep dive details. So I really appreciate that.
And I do note, to Mr. Pizza's point, there were some people that came back and did start to rebuild some things, and Russian Riverkeeper had to come and start deconstructing things again. I mean, it did happen, and we are working on it, and it is something that we're going to have to stay on top of.
All right, thank you for addressing that.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it kind of goes without saying that not only are your successes impressive and well demonstrated, but that the approach that you're taking is really, I think widely known, and not just in Healdsburg, Sonoma County, but throughout the country or wherever, that the process of connecting people with resources and housing is really the only effective way of dealing with this. And the stories you relate about people coming out of jail and coming back to the river or whatever they're repeated often. And so we understand the method, the path, and we're seeing great results because of it. The only thing that's upsetting to me, and it's been touched on a number of times, is that agencies that work with homelessness and mental health, and often they're hand in hand, sometimes they're not, are consistently grappling for funding year after year. And even though, like, for instance, in the county level here, everybody's on the same page in terms of wanting more success for Reach for Home, L&M, and other agencies. The the struggles to provide the funding and to shore that up and make that consistent are enormous. And I think they're institutional. They go all the way up the ladder: state, federal, county. In Healdsburg, I think we've shown a resolve on this particular issue, and we've had the results to back that up. But my hope is that people start to identify the necessity of creating real, sustainable, reliable funding for these sorts of programs. It's just ridiculous, the disconnect between that broken funding world and the success that you're having and the human value, the moral value of what you're doing. And I've been working with staff and people at the county to try to get a clear picture of how we can move forward. And you mentioned Rona Park; they have a Project Hunky. They're in the same boat and same struggles, and so it's been helpful to start to communicate with them about figuring out ways we can do things differently in the future. So I think that's something that everybody who cares about your success will be involved in. And I'm glad it came up from a number of people here that that really is an important goal, is to make sure that the funding scenario is really transformed in the future. And I think our communities deserve that. So I don't have anything else. I think we're completed here. So thank you once again very much for all the work you're doing. A great presentation.
Thank you for all of your support, as always. We just really enjoy the partnership, and we see the impact of what it means to work together as a community. And so thank you for that.
You usually mention how many
Thank
people transition from L&M. Each quarter.
Sorry, public comment on this item is complete. So we're moving on to item 8B, fiscal year 2025-26 mid-year financial update with Finance Director Katie Edgar. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Katie Edgar, Finance Director, here to present the mid-year financial update for fiscal year 25-26. Next slide, please. The proposed action tonight is to receive a presentation on the mid-year financial update and adopt a resolution approving amendments to the fiscal year 25-26 budget. Next slide, please. Jumping right into general fund revenues, the first column represents activity through the first half of the year ending December 31st, 2025. The second column represents the total adopted budget. Next is the amount remaining for the end of the fiscal year. And the final column is the percentage of budget received in the first half of the year. Overall, revenues received from July through December totaled just over $10.2 million, or 51% of the adopted $19.9 million budget. Notably, this does not include the December disbursement of sales tax revenue, which is expected later this month. At the first quarter update, staff proposed several amendments to various revenue sources, realigning the adopted budget with the current trends. Most of the revenues continue to actualize as expected, with a few categories like property transfer tax and development fees presenting a bit ahead of budget at the mid-year. These revenues tend to fluctuate based on macroeconomic factors, so staff are not proposing any updates at this time, but we will continue to monitor closely through the third quarter. Property tax and charges for services are also presenting high. However, the timing of collections is variable for these sources, so staff are not proposing any adjustments to these revenues at this time either. The only proposed amendment in the general fund tonight is to reduce the transient occupancy tax revenues, which have not met the budgeted growth projections. Next slide, please. General fund expenses in the first quarter total $9.7 million, or 47% of the adopted $20.7 million budget. When adjusted to remove the non-departmental category, the department operational expenses are at 49% of the adopted budget. There are no proposed changes to the general fund expenses tonight, and everyone is trending on track. Next slide, please. Looking at the fund balance chart in the general fund, the first column represents the audited actuals for the prior year, fiscal year 24-25. The middle column is the adopted budget for the current year, fiscal year 25-26. And then the last column represents the revised budget, which includes the one amendment proposed tonight. The final audited figures have changed slightly from the audited figures that were presented at the first quarter financial update, resulting in a projected unallocated fund balance of about $208,000 after accounting for the proposed amendment tonight. The general fund will fully fund the reserve target, but I would like to note that the revenues are now slightly under expenditures for the current fiscal year. While this is not a problem, looking forward to the budget development, the goal will be to maintain a balanced budget with recurring revenues fully supporting recurring expenses. Next slide, please. Moving on to community services, a revenue received through December totaled $4.4 million, or 50% of the adopted $8.9 million budget. Second quarter TOT revenues picked up significantly compared to the first quarter's returns, with October and November returns reflecting promising year-over-year growth, driven largely by the opening of the new Appalachian Hotel. Staff are optimistic that the growth will continue and are proposing a conservative reduction of $253,000 to realign the budget with current projections and account for the low first quarter returns. Next slide, please. Community services expenses totaled $4.2 million, 44% of the adopted $9.7 million budget. There are two amendments proposed tonight for the Arts and Culture Division. Staff are proposing to increase the budget by a total of $46,000 to support initiatives that were unable to be completed in the prior year due to the timing of the Arts and Culture Commission Foundation and additional staff time to support the Commission's efforts. You may also notice that a new division has been added to the Community Services Department to represent activity at the Foley Community Pavilion. Consistent with council direction, staff are not proposing to increase appropriation for the activation of this division in the current year, but will rather reallocate existing appropriations to support the events that are relocated to this event structure this year. Next slide, please. Moving on to the Community Services Fund balance, I would like to direct your attention to the last column on the right, reflecting the fiscal year 25-26 revised budget. The projected unallocated fund balance has gone down from the first quarter update due to a combination of the proposed amendments tonight, as well as adjustments to the final audited actuals in the first column. Overall, the fund is still projected to exceed the target reserve policy by about 3% or $254,000. Next slide, please. In the Measure T fund, sales tax revenue through November is trending in alignment with the adopted budget. Measure T's transaction and use tax revenue has been more resilient than the Bradley Burns sales tax allocation, which is the 1% of sales tax that goes into the general fund. And this is because the transaction and use tax is collected on online shopping that is delivered to Healdsburg, in addition to the brick and mortar stores that are located within the city. Expenditures are in alignment with budget expectations, and as a result, the fire substation being completed without using the entire construction contingency in the prior fiscal year, there is approximately $1 million in unallocated fund balance of Measure T revenue. While this additional funding is not currently allocated, several projects currently in design already have identified project shortfalls and will need additional appropriations to move forward with the construction contract award. These projects include the March Avenue Reconstruction Project, which is up next on tonight's agenda, as well as the Powell Abbott Johnson Pedestrian Crossing Enhancements Project and the Grove Street Neighborhood Plan Implementation Project. Staff will return to council at the time of construction contracts award for each of these projects to request any additional appropriations as needed. Next slide, please. Moving on to the enterprise funds, water utility rate revenue for the second quarter continues to trend ahead of the seasonal averages. Overall water consumption was down for the second quarter. However, residential usage trends shifted sharply, with a reduction in Tier 1 usage and an increase in Tier 2 and Tier 3 usage. The data suggests that the average water user has reduced their consumption, but the high users have increased their consumption. Staff are not proposing any adjustments at this time, but will continue watching the usage patterns closely throughout the third quarter. The estimated remaining working capital is about $900,000. However, there are two large capital projects replacing water and wastewater utility infrastructure on Healdsburg Ave and Brown Street that are currently in design, with anticipated construction shortfalls that will need additional capital contributions in the near-term future. Next slide, please. Utility rate revenues in the wastewater fund are trending in alignment with the projected budget, and there are no proposed amendments tonight. The wastewater fund is projected to meet both the operating reserve and the rate stabilization reserve targets, with approximately $478,000 available to support the additional capital needs in the aforementioned projects. Next slide, please. Utility rate revenues in the electric fund for the first half of the year are trending ahead of the projected budget, largely due to increased consumption. Second quarter usage was about 7% higher than the prior 5-year average and about 1% below the previous year, suggesting that the rise in consumption experienced in the previous year is being sustained due to the new users that have been added to the electrical grid. And this is compounding with the effects of the seasonal consumption shifts that we experience in the winter months. The city has also continued to receive revenue from the sale of renewable energy credits, with approximately $890,000 received in the first half of the year. The only amendment staff are proposing at this time is a small $3,000 increase in expense funding for an electric capital project that had some additional closeout costs. The electric fund is currently projected to fully fund the 50% reserve target and the capital reserve, with an additional $2 million in remaining working capital. The additional working capital largely reflects the revenue received from the sale of the renewable energy credits, which totals $2.8 million to date. Staff are continuing to explore opportunities to deploy these funds consistent with previous council direction, which prioritized exploring solar with battery storage projects and undergrounding projects. Staff will return to council with an update on the Grove Street undergrounding project on March 16th. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes the 6 amendments that are proposed tonight. The first 3 are related to the proposed reduction to the TOT revenue in the various funds. The next 2 are the increases to the operational expenses for the arts and culture program. And the last is the closeout costs associated with the capital project for electric. Next slide, please. As a reminder, the proposed action is to approve the amendments to the fiscal year 25-26 budget. And that completes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and open up to public comment first. Does anybody want to speak on this item?
I guess I mentioned this earlier today, but as far as water rates, yeah, you sounded like we're not going to take any action on it. We're just going to watch it for a while. But what kind of surplus are we running as far as covering the cost of our infrastructure upgrades? Are we running a surplus, and why can't that surplus be funneled back to the residents in the form of lower rates?
Okay, I'm going to close public comment, seeing nobody else here. Does somebody want to take that question? Maybe Director Edgars does. There may be someone else who can handle that one as well, but go ahead.
So as far as water revenues, I mean, budgeting in general is more of an art than a science. I wish I had a crystal ball to know how much water people were going to use and what types of uses that would be used in. Unfortunately, we don't. So the best thing we can do is look at kind of seasonal trends, look at what happened in the past, and different things that we know are going to happen, like new users coming online, and do our best to project what their usage would be based on similar use types. And so currently there are slight overruns. We're looking nothing that would be a significant impact if we were to try to refund customers. There's not enough overage that it would make a difference to an individual customer. It would also require a pretty much complete review of the rate setting process in order to allocate those funds to the appropriate users. As I mentioned, the Q2 usage, it was really the third tier users who were driving up those costs. So we can't just take those monies and give it back to everyone. It really has to go back to those usage groups that were performing different than expectations were. So it's really a complex kind of process. And as far as the capital projects and the infrastructure needs, budgeting, again, we do our best to provide budgets based on our engineer estimates, but we are at the mercy of the construction bid process. So while we may think, based on current material costs and expected past practices that we've had in different bids, the actual construction bids that come in are out of our control. And so we do our best to provide a budget. But as I mentioned, many of the projects, as we continue, sometimes design takes a year, sometimes it can take up to 2 years. And during that time, inflation rises, costs go up, the market and the conditions in the bidding environment can change as well. And so with all of those factors, we are seeing additional needs. Like I mentioned, we have 2 water and utility projects that are currently in design. And as we refine the scope, we already have anticipated that there will be some shortfalls. So there's definitely not a surplus. If anything, there's projects every year that we have to say, we would really love to do this. We need to do this. It has to be done. And we just don't have enough funding to do it.
Mayor, if I strongly concur with what you just heard, I just want to really quick offer another thought. You will all recall when we went through a rate review a few years ago, as painful as those increases were, and they are, we actually didn't do near as much capital investment as we would have liked at that time. We were in a position with a perfect storm of with costs going up, with usage going down, where we were failing to meet requirements for some of our bonds, and we're actually in something of a perilous position. So I'm very happy to say, through your good work and our finance team's good work, that narrative has shifted, and we're a much more stable place right now. Nevertheless, what I just said is true. We've left a lot of what we think important projects out. That's not to say every new dollar must go to more projects. There's always a push and pull in terms of how much of that work you do and how much do you keep the rates down. As you heard from Director Edgar, at this time, the extra usage and the extra revenue is pretty modest. It's very modest. So there would be no windfall going back out there. And you heard it would be very complicated to do. But it's something the council can always look at. We have rates that go into effect annually. Generally, my philosophy, and I think our staff philosophy, would be the better we do, the better we do with the next rate study. There's always, I hate to say this, but there's always another rate study around the corner. And it's my strong hope, and I imagine yours as well, that we're not looking at numbers like this in the future. Nobody has fun when the numbers are in the double digits. So, my personal philosophy and what I would recommend as something to consider is, when we do a little bit better with revenue, one, let's just watch it. It's only been a few months. It hasn't been a whole lot. Let's see how this year plays out. But also, to the extent that if it does continue, well, we're not that far away from another rate study. I don't look forward to it, and you all don't, but hopefully if we're in a better position, we'll have much more palatable numbers going out to the community. So at this point, that's my goal.
Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll bring it back to council then. I'll go ahead and start with Councilmember Kelly.
I'm
anything?
prepared to make a motion. I'm no additional comments at this time.
Okay, Vice Mayor Edwards.
Yeah, thank you very much for the clarification on that, because last meeting I had a whole bunch of questions and you said that the water usage went up, and it kind of threw me for a loop there. And I had to kind of do some rethinking and looking into our bond rating. I mean, the slight difference of a AA- to AA stable is quite significant in a city. So thanks for getting us to that point. The other thing that I went back and looked at when we were talking about it in May is I asked a specific question of how much capital improvements, what would that dollar amount be? And I went back and looked at that meeting, and it was 20 million on water, 20 million on sewer. So I didn't see in this report that we have had that $80 million come in. I see we're chipping away at it slowly, but really when it comes down to it, what's concerning to me, and it was back then, is that when times get difficult, those at the lower income are the ones who make the cuts. It always falls on the lower income ones. And I just, there's nothing we can, we're seeing how it goes. And I think that, this is in the back of my mind for the next rate study, is that obviously to me, the rate changes that we made were not tiered correctly. We're still short on the funding, but it hurts to hear that those at the lower level are the ones who are really making the sacrifice. So that's something that I'm thinking about, and it's going to be on my mind at every rate hearing. So thank you for getting us back, getting us out of that AA minus to stable. Appreciate that, but we still have a long ways to go based on that 80 million that we were originally starting to chip away at. So thank you.
Member Mitchell?
Yeah, I just had a couple not so broad questions as that, but specifically, I see a couple of areas in community services that seem really high on their budget side. The recreation programs and the swim center are seem pretty high for halfway through the year. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. So the swim center is really seasonality. We, for example, at the mid-year last year, we were at 77% expended. It's really just because of the season of which they're open. Most of that season is the beginning of the year. I think we only open for like 2, maybe 3 months towards the end of the year. So that is very expected seasonal trend. Recreation program also has some seasonality because they do a lot of programming in the summer months. We are looking into, I believe it's the 83% is high for seasonal trends, and it is largely driven by part-time staff costs. We are currently doing a comprehensive review of the allocations for part-time staff among the different divisions. We have had a lot of changing staffing of part-timers. We have almost 200 part-time staff that support the program, and the payroll support of that is very complicated. So we are currently reviewing that, and there may be some changes in where that cost gets reallocated towards different divisions. But overall, as a whole, community services is on track.
Great. Yes, thank you for that. Also, you talk about the fire substation project that was completed and money was released back to appropriations. So does that mean it came under budget?
Yes. So when we award a construction contract, typically there is a contingency that's awarded. It can vary from 10 to 20% is pretty standard. And that is to allow for change orders for unexpected events. We thought we needed to dig 10 feet down. We actually needed to dig 12 feet down. Kind of things like that that can increase costs or sometimes decrease costs. And so in the fire substation, they did not use the full contingency that was awarded for the project. We also were able to, the numbers that we had, so the fire substation was funded in a combination of contributions from the developers. So we had some funding from the Montage development as well as the North Village development. And those funding numbers specifically from North Village, who had started the project, were estimates at the time of the budget development process. And later through there, when we were able to review all of the cost accounting through them and kind of go line by line, the final number ended up being a little higher. So that was also able to relieve some of those funds. So it was a combination of coming under budget and as well as having additional funding sources that allowed us to reallocate some of those fundings in the future.
That's great. Good news, right? One last question is about the TOT. Can you just kind of give us your thoughts on where we are with that? You mentioned that the Appalachian coming online helped, and we're looking to that to help with those funds and meet the budget. Is it performing the way we anticipated? And just kind of generally tell us where we are, because we're really dependent on a lot of those funds.
We absolutely are. So the budget had pretty aggressive growth. We were at almost 8 to 9% year-over-year growth. We've adjusted it down to about 6% year-over-year growth. And most of that growth was really expected from the new hotel coming on board. We are definitely happy with, obviously, the performance of that hotel, that any new hotels, it's always a gamble on whether it will saturate the market and it'll take away from other hotel stays, or if it will truly be a boost. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, so we do our best to project based on kind of the factors that we've seen and how they've impacted it in the past. But overall, we do think that based on the second quarter growth, which was very strong, that we hopefully should be able to actualize those revenues. But the third quarter will really be where we'll see, because oftentimes a lot of hotels do see a very high boost when they open because they have a lot of kind of marketing and they see an increase. So it'll really, time is the only thing that's going to tell how it will perform in the long term.
That's great, thank you. And I agree with your recommended budget adjustments. Just they seem quite reasonable and modest at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hagley.
Yeah, just real quick on the community services, arts and culture, the part-time wages and the operational expenses of 36,000. Can you go over that again? I might have missed it. What is that related to? Like what caused the increase?
Yeah, so in the prior fiscal year, there was 25,000 that was allocated for part-time support and 50,000 that was allocated for operational initiatives to promote the Arts and Culture Master Plan. Last year, the first year of the budget, they were implementing the council goal of creating the Arts and Culture Commission, and that commission took significant time to kind of get developed and kind of get underway. And so they didn't have enough time to implement any of the initiatives that they were planning to do. So there was 46,000 from fiscal year 24-25 that was not spent. And so this action is just reappropriating those funds so that they can move forward with I believe it was a marketing and branding initiative, as well as the staff time that's needed to support that commission. They're needing more staff time than was originally budgeted for.
Yeah, I think that's the one that I'm a little concerned about because my understanding is there's a lot of subcommittees that have gotten formed. And so I was just curious, when I see like, okay, part-time wages, I think we all need to be aware when there's subcommittees formed that you're pulling staff over to now work with the subcommittee, and it adds up and adds up and adds up, and it pulls away from other things. So with that, I'm ready to second the motion that Councilmember Kelly would make if the mayor is ready.
Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I made a math error in my statement. Is that Director Zimmer said it was $2 million a mile to repair, and we have 20 miles of water, 20 miles of sewer, which is 40 million each to come up with the 80 million, not 20 million.
Thank you. Okay, I don't think we got a full motion yet, so I will entertain a motion now if we're ready.
I move to adopt a resolution approving the amendments to the fiscal year 25-26 budget.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Hagley,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor Herod.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to March Avenue reconstruction and pedestrian upgrades, project bid award and approval, etc. Welcome, Principal Engineer Clay Thistle.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Clay Thistle, Principal Engineer, Public Works Department, will be presenting to you the recommendation to award the March Avenue reconstruction and pedestrian upgrades project. Slide right there. So the recommendation is before you tonight is to adopt a resolution awarding the construction contract, authorizing the city manager to execute the contract and approve and negotiate change orders up to 15% of the original contract value, approving a cooperative funding agreement with the Sonoma County Transportation and Climate Authority in the amount of $700,000, authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement, and amending the 25-26 adopted budget. Slide, please. So just some background. March Avenue is a primary east-west route here in the city. It serves as access to schools, healthcare, among others. The pavement has been sealed numerous times over the past 10 years and suffers from wearing and delamination of those multiple seal layers. Reconstruction of the pavement is needed. Many of the curb ramps along the corridor do not comply with the current standards and need upgrades. Opportunities to cross March Avenue are limited to the single crossing at Lupine. Additional crossing and crossing enhancements are needed. The proposed March Avenue reconstruction and pedestrian upgrade project will replace water services and fire hydrant laterals, reconstruct the roadway pavement, upgrade curb ramps at all intersections, install curb line bulb outs and rectangular flashing beacons at Lupine and Prentice Drive, Install 2-foot striped bike buffer and green bike lane paint at conflict points approaching intersections. It will improve intersection visibility at Lily Street and Tulip Court by removing limited parking and replacing it with increased bike lane buffers, and improve drainage at Daisy Street. A little more background, just in April of 2024, we were awarded the $700,000 SCTA Cycle 1 program funding grant for pedestrian and bike improvements. In February of 2025 is when the council approved the design contract. And then in May of 2025, we held the community meeting to share information about the project and gather input from businesses and residents along the corridor. On June 16th, then that was the staff update, provided an update on the project to council. So December advertised for public bidding. Bids were opened in January. We received 6 bids. The lowest bid was from Argonaut Constructors for approximately $2.4 million. Bids received ranged from second lowest of approximately 2.6 to the highest bid of 3.8. The lowest bid was lower than the engineer's estimate of approximately $2.9 million by 18%. Staff believes this can be attributed to a current competitive construction market. The bid from Argonaut satisfies the bidding requirements for the project. Construction is anticipated to begin in March 2026 and be completed within 9 months. This is an estimate and will be further refined once contracts have been executed and a pre-construction meeting with the contractor held. So the fiscal impacts, as previously stated, there was the low bid of approximately $2.4 million. A 15% contingency is recommended for unforeseen. That brings the construction total to 2.79. An additional 10% is estimated for inspection and construction management, bringing a total construction phase cost to approximately $3 million. The adopted budget for the project was $2.4 million. $280,000 has been spent, leaving a shortfall that staff has recommended be filled with our SB1 fund balance, along with funds for the water work and some Measure T funding of $130,000. So again, the recommended action tonight is to award the project, authorize the city manager to execute the contract, and negotiate and approve change orders up to 15% of the construction contract. Approve the funding agreement with SCTCA, authorize the city manager to execute that agreement, and amend the fiscal year 25-26 budget. That is what I had, and I would, if there are questions.
All right, thank you. One second, we'll go ahead and start with public comment on this item. Anybody want to make a comment here? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Hagley.
I have no questions. I'm ready to get this thing paved and fixed. Okay, I would like to make a motion.
Let's just make sure that there's no other questions from the council. Councilmember Kelly, I'll check with you since you're remote.
No, thanks.
Okay.
Just had a quick question on the construction timeline. You said it's March, and in March, we're talking, that's when they go out and start painting the street and doing that sort of work?
Sure. So we haven't met with the contractor yet, and it will be their schedule to kind of develop how they want to go about pursuing the construction. Initial phases, is first we have to get the contracts executed. There are some electrical items for poles and lights, so those are long lead. They like to get those ordered so they can be in production. Next, it would be anticipated that the water work would be done. So this is replacing of those water services or fire hydrant laterals prior to the paving. The next phase of the work that would be anticipated would be the curb return work, so concrete work. and then ultimately when all that work is done and they've done the underground for the electrical, for the flashing beacons, that's when, what we're all looking forward to, is that repaving component.
Okay, I wanted to ask that because people are wanting to know when we're going to get going, but as soon as we start tearing up the street, people are going, why are you inconveniencing me? So we have a kind of a layout on that. So thank you.
You may be right. Councilmember Mitchell.
Yeah, I just had a couple comments, and the first one is, woohoo, we're getting it done. Thank you. And the other comment is that Argonaut how does they say call it? Contractors, constructions, what is it?
They call themselves Argonaut Constructors.
Constructors, thank you. We're the ones who did our purple pipe project, right? And as I recall, they came in on time and under budget.
Yes, Argonaut has successfully completed numerous projects here within the city of Healdsburg.
Okay, great. So yeah, those are my comments.
Nice. Okay, without further ado, Councilmember Hagel,
Right.
hit it.
A lot of people have been waiting for this. I'd like to offer that we adopt a resolution conditionally awarding the March Avenue Reconstruction and Pedestrian Upgrades Project to Argonaut Constructors, Inc. in the amount of $2,427,215.15, authorizing the city manager to execute the contract and negotiate and approve contract change orders up to 15% of the original contract amount, approving a cooperative funding agreement with Sonoma County Transportation and Climate Authority in the amount of $700,000, authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement and amending the fiscal year 2025-2026 adopted budget.
I think you could have read that a little faster.
Yeah.
We have a second.
There's speed
Second.
limits.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Higley,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell, Vice Mayor Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor Harrod.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to appointment of applicants to the Parks and Rec and Senior Citizen Advisory Commissions. City Clerk.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I do not have a formal presentation for you this evening. The recommended action is to appoint 2 applicants to the Parks and Rec Commission and 2 applicants to the Senior Citizens Advisory Commission for a term of 3 years due to expire January 1st, 2029. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll pass it over to the subcommittees.
Okay, who would like to begin?
I'll go with the senior subcommittee. We met and had a great pool of applicants. And not only were we able to interview them, but we also found out a lot of information back from them on how some of our services are being utilized at the senior center. So at this point, we wanted to go ahead and reappoint Rita Cordova and appoint Donna Riley, our recommendations.
And it was very gratifying that we had so many good applicants,
Yeah.
and enthusiastic members of our community who all utilize the senior center and things that go on there. So they're very familiar with it. So, and this, I think, is a long way from where we were a while back when we were saying, man, nobody's applying, maybe we should combine them, all these things. So, I mean, it's really turned a lot. And I would give Ron some credit for that. I think his enthusiasm. So yeah, these are great people that were, I think, recommended.
Yeah, and it was really hard because we had good applicants.
Yeah.
All of them were very good. And as usual, I like to encourage them to keep their eye on when there are openings to continue to want to participate in the process.
I think Councilmember Higley.
Yeah, so same, we had 4 applicants, great interviews with all of them. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at some of the big projects that are ongoing, we've got the Parks Master Plans, we've got a lot going on, we've got the Foley Family Pavilion. And just based on the conversations and the level of experience in that position and the knowledge that comes with it, we are recommending Ron Dobley and Valerie Cronin to be reappointed. It's always hard when you're reappointing somebody because you want to help elevate people, but where we're at today, I mean, the experience that they bring to the table, especially with what we have coming up, I think is very valuable. And to your point, made sure that everybody, we made sure to tell everybody, hey, there's the smart area plan. There's some other boards and commissions that you can apply for that we need the community input. So, it was nice to see new applicants come in, and I want to make sure that, that we're continuing to encourage people to apply. Councilmember Kelly, do you want to add anything?
Just to echo that it's so great to see applicants, who are interested in both of these commissions. And I want to encourage folks to reapply and to look for other ways to get involved. We have that community advisory committee coming up for the station area plan, and just lots of different community meetings and events. So even though we're choosing to reappoint folks to, I think actually Valerie possibly was a partial term too. So this will be her first full term, I think. But just appreciate everybody's interest in being involved, and excited to see the work continue.
Okay, thank you, all of you, for your work on those selections and suggestions. I appreciate your thoughts, both, and yeah, tough decisions and really wonderful community who wants to step up and serve. So we will do our best to honor that intention and give them a role where we can find it. But right now we're looking at appointing Donna Riley and Rita Cordova to the Senior Commission, and Ron Dobley and Valerie Cronin to the Parks and Rec Commission, reappointing in that case. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mayor, may we do public comment before I take the roll call vote, please?
Sorry. Yes, anybody in the public like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Thank you.
Councilmember Higley?
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly?
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards?
Yes.
Mayor Herod?
Yes. And congratulations to the appointees, and thank you once again for your willingness to serve. So no new business. We will turn to council reports on matters of interest. Who would like to go first? Councilmember Hagley.
I don't have a whole lot. I went to the mayor's and council member dinner in Cotati, and that was really about it for the last week and a half.
Okay.
Me too.
Very good.
I was there also with our assistant city manager and our public information officer. I also attended a meeting of there was a bicycle coalition get together that was really great, informative information on that, and look forward to bringing something forward from that meeting. Also went to the Magical Bridge had an event introducing kind of a musical bridge concept, and it's really nice to see that they are really working hard on fundraising events and making this project move forward. So that was really exciting to have that. We had our Russian River Watershed Association staff meeting here. Looking forward to going through again, continued work on stormwater, regulatory forum, Streets to Creek, and our Water World projects that will be coming forward and helping us with these projects going forward in the coming year. And that's it for me.
Thanks. I'm glad you made it to that magical bridge thing. I really was disappointed that I couldn't make it to that. So
Yeah,
I'm glad you're there. Yeah. Yes, I went to the mayor's and council members event. I was also present at the Russian River Watershed meeting. But I also got to go with Councilmember Kelly to the Healdsburg Schools mock city council and tour city hall last week, which was super fun. Such a great group of kids, and really fun to see them learning and excited about city government. So it was fun to work with Councilmember Kelly on that one. So Councilmember Kelly, you're last to go. Go ahead.
Thanks. We conducted interviews for the Smart Train Citizens Oversight Commission. We will be announcing those later this week, but you may recognize some of the names of those who applied and some who get appointed. So that's great to have more community involvement from folks that we've been working with. I did attend the Bike Coalition Happy Hour and the Magical Bridge Musical Bridge event on Friday night, and also attended the American Legion Crab Feed with our veterans community at the Villa last Saturday. And then we had our SCTA, RCPA, or SCTCA now, Board of Directors meeting last Monday, and I'm pleased to report that I was appointed as the chair for this next cycle. So hopefully we'll continue to do work supporting our Healdsburg community. And then I think that's about it. And obviously the field trip with the fourth graders was the peak of excitement. Thank you, Mayor Harrod.
Yeah, that was fun. Thank you for that. And yeah, I look forward to seeing who you're appointed to that commission. So I will adjourn the meeting at 8:44.